Dr. X here. Welcome back to the Skullywag Lab. For this first ever episode of Skullywag Chats, I'm going to be catching up with a good friend of mine, Dr. Lachlan Hart from the University of New South Wales. Dr. Hart's a paleontologist who recently completed his PhD with the Australian Museum, so prepare to hear about some pretty interesting things, including a species of temnospondyl that he described, and his thoughts on the scientific accuracy of some of the dinosaurs from the Jurassic Park franchise.
I was one of those kids that was like absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs when I was younger. I had one of my older brothers had this dinosaur book that he didn't let anyone else touch except for him, and so I absolutely coveted this book. And so at every opportunity I could get, I went into his room and read this dinosaur book. You know, maybe even under my blanket with a with a torch, just so I could see this amazing story of animals that lived in the past. And I think that's what kind of started my whole curiosity and obsession with paleontology. So I'm a pre-Jurassic Park baby.
Yeah, it's a common thing, hey, like, so many kids are into dinosaurs, it's great.
I feel especially like since the Jurassic Park generation, even more kids got into dinosaurs because of that movie in particular.
Yeah, for sure. But not everyone decides to try to make a career out of it, so what got you going down that path?
Bit of a long story, but I didn't initially get into science when I finished school. I didn't even study science for year 11 and 12, the last 2 years of high school. I went into teaching. So I studied to be a primary school teacher, or elementary school as they call it in the United States. And I finished my degree in that, and I was then a school teacher for over a decade. About three quarters of the way through that time, I felt this itch, this longing to go back to this passion and this interest that I had when I was a child into paleontology. And so I investigated ways that I could do that while I was still teaching. And the opportunity came up to study at the University of New England, where we eventually met. Then the rest is kind of history from there.
You did some papers with Phil Bell, right?
Yeah, my first paper was with Phil Bell, and it was about the paleoecology of Lightning Ridge, which is this really unique Cretaceous site in New South Wales that preserves fossils in opal. So that was really cool. And then from there, my master's project kind of sprung from there. So I did my master's at UNE as well with Phil, and that was on opalized crocodile fossils, also from Lightning Ridge.
Yeah, I remember some really good images of that in your ISIS 40 paper.
Yeah, you were on that one.
Yeah, I did a little bit of a reconstruction. Was that a humerus or something like that?
I think it was a tibia.
A tibia, sure. So, how did you go from working on fossilized, opalized crocodile teeth to getting into temnospondyls? How did you find that project?
When I finished my master's, I was looking for the next step. I knew I wanted to do a PhD and continue down the paleontology route. And I was speaking to a bunch of different academics all around. I wanted to come back down to Sydney. I wanted to return home. And I had this opportunity to do my PhD with Matt McCurry, who works at UNSW, and he's also the curator of paleontology at the Australian Museum in Sydney. And I had a quick chat with Matt, and we spitballed a few project ideas, but one that really stood out for me was working on temnospondyl amphibians. In particular, there was this one fossil that became one of the focal points of my PhD, which was an undescribed large temnospondyl that they found in a retaining wall back in the late 90s.
What exactly is a temnospondyl, and how does it differ from the crocodiles and other stuff you'd previously worked on?
Temnospondyls are an extinct group of amphibians. They arose on Earth during the Carboniferous period, and they survived right through to the Cretaceous. They had a really wide range of, especially skull morphologies, and I know your viewers will be particularly interested in that part. But some of them looked a lot like kind of blown up giant salamanders or stretched out frogs. More of them looked like crocodiles or gharials. But in essence, they are different to crocodiles because crocodiles are reptiles and temnospondyls are still categorically amphibians. So which means they still had to lay their eggs in a water body, and they went through a larval stage just like tadpoles do to turn into frogs today.
Wow. That'd be some pretty crazy tadpoles. Um,
Yeah, they've found some fossils of like larval temnospondyls, and they look absolutely nuts. They've got external
wow.
gills. They look a bit like axolotls.
There's some really weird shaped heads in those, aren't there?
They're one of the widest range of skull morphologies I've seen in any vertebrate group that I've looked at.
Awesome.
So we have some really long skulls, like I said before, that were shaped like gharials, like that very elongate snout. Some had a more rounded snout, like a freshwater crocodile, or even a saltwater crocodile. And some had a parabolic head shape, so very round, almost like a inverted dome. Some had heads shaped like toilet seats. Um, yeah, it was completely nuts, and a massive array of sizes as well. The largest temnospondyls could grow to maybe 7, 8, up to 10 meters long, and the smallest ones you could hold in the palm of your hand at full growth.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of diversity. What would the equivalent of that be like today? That sounds even more diverse than your crocodiliforms around today.
Yeah, well, crocodile forms around today are quite kind of constricted. Apart from your gharial that has that really extreme longerostry, uh, they're more or less kind of more conservative, I guess you could say. There aren't any analogues for temnospondyls
Mm.
alive today, and that is one of the huge hurdles I had to overcome during my PhD studies when I was looking at their skulls in particular.
What was your most interesting finding that you had in your thesis?
The most interesting finding would have been that we can estimate the body mass of temnospondyls by looking at different parts of their skeleton, in particular their skull, but also their long bones, their leg and their arm bones, looking at the circumference of those, and even using things like the total length of their skeleton. You don't often find complete skeletons, and so using a metric that uses the total length of the skeleton to estimate something like body mass, it's not going to really be applicable a lot of the time. But yeah, what I found was that these methods that I tested had already been developed or used on other vertebrate groups, and I found that even though there's no modern analog for temnospondyls, I found a bunch of methods that worked for a bunch of different animals that were all kind of like temnospondyls, and it actually worked to give us effective body mass estimation methods.
Cool. Yeah, I took a look at your paleobiology paper again before this interview, and there's some really cute low poly reconstructions in there. Can you
Yeah,
talk a
they're
bit
great.
about those and how that works?
Yeah, so the low poly reconstructions, or I call them the Super Mario 64 reconstructions. Um, that that I did those to do one particular body mass estimation method, which has been used a lot in the past, called convex hulling. And basically, what that does, it turns all the functional elements of the skeleton into a 3D model or a 3D shape, and estimates the mass or the volume actually of each of those shapes, and then adds them together to estimate the mass. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. When you're looking at a skeleton, you kind of have to make affordances for the adipose tissue, the fatty tissue that doesn't fossilize, or muscle that doesn't fossilize. And so, yeah, sometimes that convex hulling method doesn't really work, but it still looks kind of funny.
Yeah, they look great. So, what's something interesting about your research that you want everybody to know about?
Well, I just want everybody to know about temnospondyls, Rex, because when we
Yeah.
talk about paleontology, we talk about fossil animals. Everyone wants to talk about dinosaurs, and I like talking about dinosaurs too. We all love dinosaurs, but the fact of the matter is that there were so many other equally diverse and equally as interesting groups that lived before, during, and after the time period of the dinosaurs that haven't really been given their flowers yet. And temnospondyls are definitely one of them. They actually survived longer on Earth than all of the non-avian dinosaurs. So that's something to be celebrated to begin with. And here in Australia, we had the last surviving member of that group.
That leads on to the next question I had for you. Is there a species you want to give a particular shout out to?
Well, I mean, I'd like to give a shout out to the one that I named during my PhD. So that was a genus and species, so I named it, and that was called Arenaerpeton supinatus. And Arenaerpeton was that one I mentioned earlier that they found in a retaining wall. They found the fossil of a like, almost complete skeleton of a temnospondyl in the retaining wall when they were building a house. And I had the privilege of naming and describing that one. So yeah, that's my big shout out for that one, and it's a bit of shameless self promotion there.
That's cool.
But yeah, my favorite temnospondyl to talk about at the moment is Koolasuchus. It's got a cool,
Koolasuchus?
yeah, it's got a cool name with a K.
Even
Um,
cooler.
even cooler. It's like Mortal Kombat with a K instead of a C. Um,
Yeah.
And yeah, but Koolasuchus was the last surviving temnospondyl. It lived in Australia during the Cretaceous period when all other temnospondyls died out by the Jurassic. It's got this massive temporal gap between that and its most closely related ancestor. And not only that, it was huge. It was one of the biggest temnospondyls that ever lived, and it's living in Australia amongst dinosaurs. Um, and so there's this bit of mythology about it, about how it could have been, perhaps a predator of dinosaurs, a giant amphibian eating small dinosaurs. Um, I'm not sure if I'm sold on that idea, but it's definitely a really interesting animal to research and to think about.
Have you found any evidence of these species in any of your field work or anything?
I've recently been to a site in New South Wales. I won't disclose exactly where it is, but we have removed a really large temnospondyl skull from a quarry, and it's being prepped at the moment. So hopefully that will be a new species that we get to describe sometime in the near future.
Awesome. So, in terms of all of the in-depth research you do, nobody does more research on a particular topic than a PhD student. So, what's probably one of the more important papers that you relied upon for that sort of work?
Look, there's a whole bunch of different papers uh, that have been written about temnospondyls. They've been known to science for over 200 years. There's actually statues of them in Crystal Palace with those really goofy looking dinosaurs. There's goofy looking temnospondyls at Crystal Palace too. So they're definitely not a new discovery or anything like that. And so I like reading some of those historic papers just because they're laughably incomplete with their descriptions. But there was a paper that came out, I think it was in 2011, and the lead author was Joseph Fortuny, and he did a whole lot of work on the bite force of temnospondyls. Um,
Is that an FDA paper?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's a really cool paper. And it's just showing like just that we can learn more about these ancient amphibians now, even though they've been extinct for a long time. That paper also kind of gave me the inspiration for finding modern analogues for things as well.
I'm not sure if temnospondyls have had a huge impact in Hollywood, have they? Yet.
No.
I can't take this anymore.
So I guess we'll go back towards the more dinosaurs, crocodiles sort of thing. Is there anything that these movies or games or TV have gotten like really, really correct, factually accurate to the best of our knowledge, or anything that's really wrong?
Look, whenever there's good, there's often also bad. And in fact, I do recall that in that old Walking with Dinosaurs TV show that was around in the mid 90s, I think, there is an episode that's based in the Cretaceous of Australia, and it does feature Koolasuchus. So,
Really?
yeah, unfortunately, it's featured lunging out of the water at a dinosaur. So I'm not sure if that part about it is particularly accurate, like I mentioned before, but there's definitely like the reconstruction of it looks great. In general, I think that there are a lot of things that Jurassic Park gets right with their paleontology reconstructions. I think in general their T Rex reconstructions are pretty good. Their sauropods look okay, but there's bits about them that they just continually get wrong.
Mm.
The the wrists on the dinosaurs is a big one that everyone talks about. That all the Jurassic Park dinosaurs are playing the piano when they shouldn't be. Their wrists should be pointing upwards. They should be giving you a thumbs up, not
Okay.
There was a ceratopsian dinosaur, I think, in the last Jurassic Park movie, and this particular dinosaur had it's got fenestrae in its frill, in those trademark frills that ceratopsian dinosaurs have, and that would have been covered by skin in real life, but in Jurassic Park they decided to make them like hollow, and so they
Really?
just got these two massive holes in the skull that you could look through. I think that was in the most recent movie, but like, I can't like criticize too much. I know that paleontologists in particular like to criticize these things. I just think it's really good that it's getting out there and it's getting kids interested and even some adults interested in dinosaurs and in paleontology. And look, if they find something that's really interesting to them and they do some research and they find out, hey, there's actually more accurate information now or something along those lines, then I think that's really important.
So, what's something that you would like to see represented in movies or TV that maybe hasn't been yet, or hasn't been the way you'd like it to be?
Chuck in some Temnos.
Yeah, any Temnos, any time, any place.
Yeah, make it Triassic Park because that's when we had the most diversity of Temnospondyls, and just have all these weird ass amphibians just like crawling around and doing some strange things. That'd be hilarious. And like I said before, just like exploring the fact that yes, dinosaurs are cool, and I'm not taking that away from them at all, but paleontology and ancient life is so much more than just dinosaurs.
Something I've been wanting to ask quite a few people is when you finish a PhD, you know a lot more about the field that you're in, and now that you've got this like greater understanding of everything going on in your specific question, if you could go back, is there another kind of a question that you would answer, or is there another kind of question you would do if you could do another PhD?
Yeah, look, if I was to have my time again and start a PhD and do it all over again, I'd probably focus more on the type of things that you study. So more of the functional aspects of skeletons and skulls, and apply it to a paleontology a paleontology context, obviously, because that's what I do. But my PhD, I did a lot of taxonomy. So I did a lot of describing species and describing bones. I did a little bit of paleobiology when I did the body mass estimation stuff. But in general, I would have liked to do a little bit more of the theoretical modeling stuff.
So what's up next for you? Have you got any new projects that you're going to dip your toe into, or?
Yeah, so I'm doing a bit of both. So I'm now here at the School of Education at UNSW, and so I'm teaching pre-service teachers. So I'm teaching into teacher education. So I've come full circle, and I'm back to in the whole education realm. But a really great thing about what I do is that I can still look at my fossils. I can still learn more about paleontology, which is great. And yeah, I am scratching a bit of an itch that I kind of mentioned earlier, that looking into those feeding aspects of Koolasuchus and considering if it really was lunging out of the water and eating dinosaurs.
So we're on to the wild card set of questions where the guest gets to pick one and I get to pick one. So Dr. Hart can go first.
I really like the question you got there that says, what's something you would have liked to know before you started your PhD? And I think the one thing that I would have really liked to know, and I convinced myself after I started it, was that it's never too late to start. And it's really important to know that. Like, I was a fair bit older than the other members of my lab when I started my PhD, but I told myself, well, in 4 years I'm going to be 40 years old, whether or not I have a PhD or not. So, which is the better outcome there, being 40 with or without a PhD? And so, yeah, and I applied myself that way, and I have other aspects that I had to juggle that some other younger students don't. I've got a family, I've got children, and so that was an added complication, but it was also a welcome distraction. because you need a life outside of your PhD. And that's something else that a lot of PhD students should probably take away from this. You need a good work-life balance because you learn it in your PhD and then you can take it on into your professional life after that.
Excellent. All right. I noticed you've got a lot of fossils in your background there. So I'm going to ask, what's your favourite fossil?
Ooh. Look, my favorite fossil, I'm going to go back to Arenaerpeton, which I spoke about before. So it was a large, as a brachiopoid temnospondyl, and they found it, in the retaining wall. It was near complete. It had soft tissue preservation, and that they were literally got a bunch of rocks from a quarry, and they were building this wall at this chicken farmer's house on the central coast of Australia, of New South Wales in Australia. And as the landscaper was hosing the mud off at the end of the day on the top layer of rocks, the skeleton just appeared from under the mud. And it's near articulated, near completely articulated. And as I said, soft tissue preservation, teeth, ribs, the lot. It became a bit of an obsession for me during my PhD because I had to work really hard on getting it described. Part of that process was taking it to the Australian Border Force to try to get it X-ray scanned in one of their high-powered X-ray scanners to try to see through the really thick rock that it's embedded in. That didn't work, but it was a fun experience anyway. And so, eventually it became, pretty much, a fifth child of mine. And so I got to describe and name it. And then when it finally went on display at the Australian Museum, about 25 years after it was discovered, that was a real big buzz for me too.
Amazing. Where can people follow your work or find out more?
You can find me on Google Scholar and ResearchGate. I do have an X, but I don't use it very often.
Great to have you on, Dr. Lachlan Hart, everybody.
Thanks, Dr. X.